Chris Cuomo here. Welcome to NewsNation. Let's get after it, my brothers and sisters. If you don't stand for something, you will fall for anything. Now, in politics, that comes down to what are you about as a matter of principle, okay? Positions can change. Facts, circumstances, pragmatism, of course. But what do these parties stand for? I don't know. On either side. I don't know other than being against the other one. That's the only thing that makes this new right-wing movement different than what I've seen before or in other countries. It's not that that's unusual to have a right or a far right or whatever you want to call MAGA. It's that its organizing principle is to own the left and to mostly magnify that message through social media. And I'll point that out to you now with easy examples. And the Democrats have a similar challenge. And I know you'll be like, oh, why with both sides? Because the two-party system is killing us. It is a toxic game. And the sooner you see it, the sooner we can get to something better. Exhibit A. What is MAGA about? The GOP, the Constitution, and law and order. That's what they keep saying, right? Back to basics. Okay. So you're about the Constitution, and then you're going to tell me that a president can override the 14th Amendment with an executive order? Have you never seen Schoolhouse Rock? Of course you have. This isn't about ignorance. You know that a constitutional amendment can't be undone by an executive order. It's an arrogance, my brothers and sisters, with all due respect. And I love you. You are welcome here, okay? Because I respect you enough to tell you what you're not being told in your silos. That is not standing for the Constitution to say that a president can unilaterally overturn an amendment to the Constitution. And as for law and order, what's the highest form in our society of law and order? The Supreme Court. No, that's the highest court. What's the highest form of law and order? Judicial review. Or, am I wrong? Does the right now believe that Marbury v. Madison, 1803, no longer good law? That is the seminal case that sets the ground rules for our checks and balances. Right now, President Trump and co. are saying a judge, a federal judge in one district, can't block a nationwide presidential action, not just one lowly district. Patently unlawful, says Stephen Miller, the non-lawyer. Over the weekend, a district court judge ordered Trump to turn back flights deporting migrants under the Alien Enemies Act. The migrants were allegedly hardened gangbangers, and Trump allegedly ignored the order since the flights already left the U.S. They had a hearing today. It was very messy. The government didn't seem like it wanted to tell this judge much, like they know they're going to appeal. So they're playing it like the judge is a lefty who's defending gangbangers. But that's BS. Look, who's not in favor of getting rid of gangbangers? Okay? Of course. But how you do it matters in America. We're not some kind of banana republic. That's what the Constitution's about. The Alien Enemies Act that they used to do this is from 1789 or something like that. It hasn't been used since World War II. It was never contemplated for anything like this, and they know it. The last time it was used, it was to put the Japanese in camps. Now look, getting rid of gangbangers is good, but you got to do it the right way if you care about the Constitution. So what are you about? Convenience or conscience and Constitution? Pick your The best proof that the right has been forgetting about principle in favor of a raw pragmatism is that what they are against now, which is, again, the bedrock of our country's constitutional reckoning, which is the power of the three parts of the government, the branches and the checks and balances, and respecting the four corners of the Constitution. You don't want to respect the four corners because you don't respect the amendment. You don't want to respect the three branches because you don't respect judicial review, and you're doing it out of pragmatism because you used to believe in exactly with what you're saying is wrong now. How do we know? 100 times over. In Trump's first term, again and again, what did we see? Remember DACA, 2018? How did you get rid of DACA? One federal district court judge in Texas. That's how it started. Halted the program for the whole country and joined the government. Then the government, the administration, appealed. And what happened? It was just this past January. The Fifth Circuit ruled, you know what, DACA is unlawful. Now, was it wrong for that one judge in Texas who was a rabid righty, by the way, to stop a nationwide policy? Didn't hear the MAGA folk worried about it then. Where was Stephen Miller then? Because it's not about rogue judges. It's about rogue reasoning that a president should get what he wants, and if not, the system is bad. That is not a principle that America has ever stood for. Stood against it plenty of times. How about when Republicans pushed to end the individual mandate in the ACA, Obamacare? How did that start? One district court judge in Florida ruled it unconstitutional. Was that wrong? And then they appealed, and we saw what happened. Went to the Supreme Court. That's the system. It was okay then, not okay now. Why? You tell me what principle it's based on other than just preference. Nebraska went after Biden's student loan forgiveness program in 2022. And by the way, they didn't even have standing at first. The district court said, you don't have standing. Guess what they did? They appealed. And guess what? They won. And guess what happened at the Supreme Court? Biden's plan was found unconstitutional. Started in one lowly district court, federal level. Maybe they didn't even have standing. Appealed. Won. That's the system. That's what makes us great. Same as now, when Trump is trying to use a law from the 1700s to do something the law never contemplated. But look, use the system. Look, I'm fine. Give it a try. This judge doesn't like it. Appeal. Fight it out. Let the system work, but respect the damn system. That's democracy. And that must be enough as a matter of principle. Otherwise, you tell me what you're for. Exhibit B. I told you when Elon Musk was saying Social Security is part of our deficit issue, beware. This guy's a genius. He can't be saying something this stupid. Why is he saying something this stupid? If they really want to spare a program that serves 2 out of 3 elderly and many dependents and injured, why would he say this? Now what comes out? A memo that suggests within Social Security, Trump's officials, a very suspect measure that will almost certainly damage people who need the program. The Trump official says, no. I just want to identify fraud. Oh, yeah, how? How do you want to identify fraud? It's a worthy principle. You know how they want to do it? They want elderly people, okay, to go online and prove their identity when making a claim over the phone. Now, do you think a lot of elderly people aren't up to that? I don't even know if I am, to be honest. I can't even get to DMV right now in New York and get my registration redone. I'm going to get all kinds of tickets. And now, if the elderly can't do it, guess what they have to do? Got to walk into a Social Security office and verify their identification. 40% of claims are done over the phone. 40% of claims are done over the phone. 3 problems. 1, like I said, a lot of old people can't do this on the internet. And if they don't, they have to go to the facility and verify, meaning they'll get boxed out of legitimate payments. 40% are done over the phone. 2, a lot of them won't be able to get to the offices. A lot of them are housebound. And you know what the wait time is right now for an appointment? Over a month. And do you know what Trump just did? Laid off 12% of the workforce, closed dozens of offices. You think that's going to make the wait time shorter? And 3, just because Elon Musk lied to you about 10% of the federal payments being Social Security fraud, and that there's a zombie army of millions of people 150 years old getting benefits, just because he says it, and he's a genius, and he makes rockets, doesn't mean he knows it. He's lying, okay? Both are demonstrable lies. Now, why isn't he just wrong? Because he's too smart to say something so stupid. Now, why is he lying? He's got to give you that answer. I don't know. But it's not a mystery, and it's a lousy principle. Improper payments are real with Social Security and every other program. But how much? Everyone has found that it's less than 1% of the overall payout. Hey, that's billions of dollars. I think you should figure out a way to do it. And you know what they have? They just did a study of the Inspector General's office, OIG. 5 years they looked at, all right? They found $78 billion. They wound up clawing back half of it, okay? So you still got 30-something billion out there to find. Great, go ahead and find it. But it's less than 1% of their overall payments. And you're going to make 2 out of every 3 elderly person at risk of losing a payment when 40% of their payments are going to be changed as a structure in a way that probably won't accommodate them? Are you kidding me? So what are you about? Now, scroll up to the Democrats, because nobody here gets a pass. There are openings here for the Democrats, okay? But what are they about other than Trump sucks? Exhibit A, going bad on the Senate Democrats for not shutting down the government. Why? Why? They weren't going to get a better deal. They don't have the numbers. They won't even have a better ask. The Democrats once railed rightly against Republicans for doing this thing. What changed? What changed is the Democrats abandoned principle for the pragmatism of advantage. One problem. What they're doing right now is what got them right here. And you know where here is? Terrible numbers. 29% of Americans have a favorable view of the Democratic Party. Over half of you, unfavorable. NBC, 27. The numbers suck. They haven't seen this since the 90s. And you know what? The 90s is the last time, the mid-90s, when the Democrats were faced with an angry, aggressive, populist movement against the institutions of government. Remember the contract on America with Newt Gingrich? Now, people who are saying, you know what, they just need a leader. You don't understand the Democratic Party. You don't understand them. The GOP, you can be a messenger away. You find the right man or woman, they'll follow. The left is different. They're like herding cats. The right is like dogs. The left needs a message that coalesces and the messenger follows. They saw this in the 90s. How did the Democrats come back after the bloody 94 midterms that took out one of their greatest orators and messengers, my father, after 3 terms as a governor? How? Clinton looked at what happened and architected a message with leaders in that party that being angry about everything doesn't change anything for the better. He took that message as a matter of principle in showing that Gingrich and that contract on America was a deal with the devil, and America could do better by working toward better together. And he did, even with Lewinsky over his head. Welfare reform, using the tech economy to pay down deficits. Yes, he was benefiting from what George Bush had done, H.W. Bush, with pay-as-you-go budgeting, which is a great set of rules that they should bring back. But a lot of what he did was bipartisan, working with people who were trying to throw him out of office. You see, the message came first, and then it found its appropriate agent. I know this because that message was, in part, developed by the man who raised me. Remember his words.
We believe as Democrats that a society as blessed as ours, the most affluent democracy in the world's history, one that can spend trillions on instruments of destruction, ought to be able to help the middle class in its struggle, ought to be able to find work for all who can do it, room at the table.
You had Bill Clinton. I nominated him in 1992. His first year was 1993. They produced 22 million new jobs, an upwardly mobile middle class, a shrinking poor population. What is it that they did that we can't do? They collaborated. He got together with Gingrich and with the Republicans. Why? Because he had to.
Let me tell you something. My father didn't like making a deal with anybody. Okay? He was no Bill Clinton in that regard. But these are your giants in the Democratic Party. Where is that principle today, where you're willing to work with somebody to get something better? And you know that you're about something to begin with. Being in the business of better means you don't care if compromise means a political win for your opponent. You're about the people, not a party. Being in the business of better means that you find the right hills to die on. Trans girls in sports, not the hill. Shutting down the government, not the hill. Anything that AOC and Bernie are going around the country calling a socialist revolution, these are fringe plays, not the stuff of powerful principle that connects with the majority. Doesn't it matter to you that AOC, Bernie, they won't go anywhere to make their case except friendly media outlets? Why? Because they know they can't defend it. They know they're peddling to the fringe. They're banking on being the next wave of extreme populism. What does that get the majority? The idea that people put you in there to just stop the other side, that's not what being better than Trump is supposed to look like. Better ideas, better deals, better arguments, better messaging, better actions, not just being obstinate. That's how the Republicans were, and that's how they got crushed in the midterms during Trump's first term and Biden's. The red wave evaporated. Why? Because they stood for nothing but opposition. And abject opposition is not a principled position. So what do I have right, and what do I have right? I'm kidding. What do I have wrong? Legendary Democratic strategist James Carville. Good to see you, my brother, and thank you for joining me on a Monday.
Thank you.
So, first of all, what grade do I get? I'm only looking for a C+.
I'll give you a pretty doggone good grade, because what you did is point out the thing. They don't care about the law. Some border guy says, I don't care what a judge says. Well, when you don't care what a judge says, then you blow the whole gasket. So I'll give you very, very high marks for that and putting that front and center. The truth of the matter is what the Democratic Party should be about, and when I watched those clips, it reminded me what it needs to be about, and that is we're the party for the people that are trying to make it, and they're the party for the people that have it made. And when you have that dichotomy, everything flows from that. All right? So you're right. The image of the party is low. I don't have a good image of the Democratic Party. You know why? We lost. Political parties exist for one reason, and that is to win elections. When they lose elections, people lose faith in them. And I further take all of the people that are calling the charge of the Light Brigade. If you embrace the language of the identity left, if you said, Joe Biden, we have the duty to be behind Joe Biden no matter what, and then you said we can't have a contested primary under any cost, then I'm sorry, you have a hat trick of being wrong. Why don't you take a breather, reevaluate your position, and then come back in the game with something different? But most of these people, go ahead.
So my guy's got some numbers. Put up that number that shows who Democrats are saying represents what they're about right now. And I think it's a diagram of the problem, James, not the solution. Right. AOC gets the highest number? I mean, do they want to lose elections forever, except if they're held on Twitter? I mean, who on that list do you see going out and beating anybody on a national level? I mean, obviously, Obama can't run. That's not fair.
I gave you a high grade for your intro. I'm going to give you a really low grade here. This is just name. If the fact that 10% say AOC, well, 90% didn't. And, you know, if I do, who you think should be the Democratic nominee, Joe Biden, Franklin Roosevelt, or somebody else, Franklin Roosevelt's going to get 12% because they just heard of it. All right. And you're right. The party is in the wilderness, and it will only come out, and it will, when it becomes an effective and smart opposition party, not a bunch of hoo-has, screaming and yelling, do something, I don't care what. And that's just going to take time. I am not overly concerned. Let's remind everybody, this is March of an odd number year. When we win in Virginia, if we win in Wisconsin, the image of the party is going to go up 5 points. If we win in Virginia, the image of the party is going to go up another 5 points. If we win in 2026, the image of the party is going to go high. But people want their party to win. That's the most important thing. And that's the thing we can never lose sight of. And the way to win last time was to reject the language of identity left, was to have an open, contested primary where people could see the marvelous talent that exists in the party. People decided that that wasn't the way to go, and we're paying the price for that, plain and simple.
James, I accept my grade, but I will give you additional facts. First of all, I don't think it's just a name identity or recognition poll. I don't think that's what it was. But I'll tell you what concerns me. I will spare you, and I know you'll reject this, but you need to know because the media and the whole cycle works off of social media now. And I know that's wrong, and I know it's disconnected from the reality of this country, but that's where we are in the business. My podcast with you, you would not believe how many people said that you and I, James Carville and a Cuomo, don't get what being a Democrat is about. That I don't know when Carville was a Democrat, but in the modern era, it's scary to me because they don't even know what made them great anymore. They don't even get it, James. They should be listening to everything they say. They should be tattooing your head on their arms.
You know, there's an expression in the River Parish where I grew up, says, I ain't studying about none of this. I don't pay attention to these people. And all they do is talk about how old I am and how there's the wave of the future. I would give anything if one of these people ever beat a Republican. When anybody on the identity left or anybody that's coming in with all of these grand, do me a favor, beat a Republican, and then I will have respect for you. Do what Ruben Gallego did. Do what Jackie Rosen did. Do what Tammy Baldwin did. Do what Alyssa Slotkin did. Try beating a Republican, not beating some guy in the Bronx that's 75-year-old Democrat and think you did something. And I see these people coming up and I notice, and they're calling for action immediately. And I look up the partisan lean of their district and it's plus D27. Well, if all you care about is your plus D27 district, and by the way, you can't beat a Republican anywhere. And that's what a political party exists for, not to go around claiming moral superiority. It exists to win elections, and they need to get that through their thick, stupid skull.
Even though you have green on, and I'm not a St. Patrick's Day guy. First of all, he was English, but I love you, James, and you're spot on. You get an A+ every time out.
I think that I got a lot of Carvilles in Ireland. Happy St. Patrick's Day.
I'm sure they are. I'm sure there are. Find me some Cuomos.
Thank you, man.
Thank you, James. Thank you for coming on my show. Appreciate you. 4 minutes and 35 seconds. James Carville doesn't know what the Democrats are about. I mean, how stupid is that kind of comment? Do you want to lose forever? Listen to this guy. He changed your party's fate, okay? You are on his shoulders right now. On his shoulders. Anyway, the Trump administration used this old law to do something that is a good idea right now. All right? Getting rid of Venezuelan gang members is a good thing. But you've got to do it the right way. It's the same problem with Musk and Doge. Nobody wants waste, fraud, and abuse. But you can't just lie and hack through programs to find it. And then what you find isn't even that. Did Trump have the law on his side? Let's look at it, okay?
These allergies while you sleep? So you wake refreshed for a more productive day. Get 24-hour continuous relief that does not fade. Be wise all, take Zysol at night.
NewsNation tomorrow. Steve Bannon. He's MAGA royalty and always has an opinion. Ukraine, the economy, and of course, Elon Musk. Bannon goes one-on-one with Cuomo. Live tomorrow at 8/7 Central, only on NewsNation.
The Trump administration wants to get rid of gangbangers. That's good. They want to get rid of them fast. That could be good too. But do they want to do it without due process? That may be why they were using the Alien Enemies Act. Okay? It's from the 1700s, late 1700s, but it allows you to do just that. But it's for during wartime with known enemies at that time. Now they're trying to use it for these Venezuelan gang members. Is that a good fit? That's why they're in federal court. That's why this judge was in a tough position to let it go, right? This is a pretty awkward use of the law. And the Trump is playing politics with it. So let's discuss the legalities and the policy things here, okay? I have a great couple of guests for you. Former acting director of ICE, John Sandwick, okay? And former acting deputy secretary of Homeland Security in Trump first administration, Ken Cuccinelli. It's good to have you both, fellas. Thank you for joining me. Cooch, I start with you. Is this the way you would have gone? And I mean, look, getting rid of the gangbangers, if John wants to argue with that, he can, but he's going to be 2 against 1. But in terms of how they're doing it, what do you think?
So they're obviously being very aggressive here. When the judge ordered them to turn around, they're in international waters, so they can at least take a defensible position as to why they didn't do that. And look, this hasn't been used. This being the Alien Enemies Act hasn't been used in this way before. And they're looking to see, just as you said, Chris, if they can use it because it does require less due process. And let's be clear, as Americans, we hear due process and we automatically think everybody gets that. That is not true in the deportation space. And an ICE expert will tell you that. You get the due process that Congress is willing to give you. And the courts have found that time and time again. So if he can use this methodology, and Tren de Aragua is a little different because they've allegedly done some of the dirty work of the Venezuelan government itself. So it puts them in a position that MS-13's not in, that, the LA Kings are not in. None of the other gangs are in this position. So they're going to test it, but they weren't going to bring those folks back because they thought they had a legal basis to avoid doing that. But otherwise, I agree with your comments. This is going to play out in courts. And if the president wins, there's going to be a new tool in presidential toolboxes going forward.
One of the reasons I was hoping you were going to go back in, Ken, is that, you would have argued the position of the administration, of course, but you would have never said, I don't want some one federal judge telling me what a president can or can't do. I mean, I don't know why they have Stephen Miller saying that stuff. I really don't get it, but you're not here to answer for that. John, what's your smell test on whether this works and how you can get people out fast without using something like this?
Ken, you just look at the track record, or Ken, excuse me, Chris, you look at the track record of ICE, including...
We look alike. It's Italians. It's Italians. It's very bigoted, John. I'm going to let it go, though.
Look, you look at the track record. ICE has been able to deport the worst of the worst. Been able to get out gangbangers. We've been able to get out convicted criminals. We've been able to do it with the due process Congress has traditionally provided, which calls for a hearing before an immigration judge. These guys can be detained by ICE. When they're detained, they get an expedited hearing. So I'm scratching my head about the problem we're trying to solve. And then you have this added issue, Chris, of course, of whether or not they're subject to judicial review or not, them being the administration. So at the end of the day, I guess, why are we giving up our values when we can still get the bad guys? We can still target them. We can still deport them. We can still make our streets safe. We don't need to, walk away from what we kind of stand for as a country in terms when it comes to giving people an opportunity to at least argue that they're not a gang member. We can prove it against them in court and then get them out of here.
Yeah.
So, Ken, what do you think of that? Do it the right way, it's the best way.
I think those are reasonable points entirely. I would just counter a little bit. I would say that they're using the invasion portion of 50 USC 21, which is the statutory implementation of the Alien Enemies Act. With the invasion piece, there have only been 4 appellate courts that have ruled on this. They've all ruled that the federal government's decision about an invasion is unreviewable by courts. No appellate court, nor the Supreme Court, has ruled otherwise. So they are relying on that. It puts them in a very strong position, frankly, to have the case thrown out, not just reversed, but thrown out. And second of all, I would say, to expand on my earlier point, everything you said is correct in terms of going through due process. They're finding ways to do this even faster. If this president is going to deport more people than any president before him, and currently Barack Obama holds that record around 3 million, then they have to do more than triple their current pace of deportations, triple, just to match Barack Obama. And they are not on track to do that. They need new tools, and they need to build out their logistical pipeline, which really hasn't started yet in any meaningful way.
So, John, why isn't the best way to do it to go to Congress while you have the numbers and say, we want the Foot in the Ass Act passed to kick gangbangers right out of the country?
Chris, the Foot in the Ass Act is actually hiring some immigration.
You can have that, by the way. You can have that, Cooch. Cooch is going right on there. He's sending that in.
PETA. You can have it by hiring some immigration judges. Surge resources into the courts. That'll accomplish all the president's goals. Look, I was part of that Obama administration. We did it by focusing in on the criminal elements and focusing almost exclusively on them so we could get a more expedited process through the immigration courts. We can have that. Just surge money into the immigration courts. People can have their day in court. Then they can be removed. It's hard to complain about that.
John, Cooch, thank you very much, fellas. To be continued as we see where this case goes and where the numbers go. Thank you both very much. And happy St. Patrick's Day to anybody it applies. All right, 4 minutes and 30 seconds. Up next, Trump made another big announcement today, okay? He wants to null and void the pardons that Biden gave to the people on Trump's enemies list, or some of them, like Tony Fauci, the members of the January Select Committee. Why? The auto pen. The auto pen. It makes all of them null and void. Is there any law to that? Is there any logic to that? Okay. Norm Eisen knows law, knows logic. He's got answers. Next.
And celebrate 75 years of breakthroughs at MDA75.org.
The United States, who I think we can all finally agree was cognitively impaired. Did the president even know about these pardons? Was his legal signature used without his consent or knowledge?
She ain't a lawyer. That's White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt doubling down on Trump's Truth Social post, saying that the pardons Joe Biden gave to the Unselect Committee, that's what he's calling it, of political thugs are hereby declared void because they were done by auto pen. Now, before I bring in my next guest to discuss the law and the policy here, remember what I said about principle. When you are only about advantage and owning the other side, it is dicey and a slippery slope, because you better make sure that what you say about them is not true about you. Put up the pictures, Dusty. Do you think these are all separate signatures done by Trump? Do you see how exact these signatures are? And if in fact he did not sign these and they were done by the dreaded auto pen, are they void? You know what he signed this way? The Gulf America Day executive order. That's renaming the Gulf of Mexico the Gulf of America. Guess that's back to the Gulf of Mexico. Flying flag at full staff on Inauguration Day. There goes Old Glory. The January 6th pardons are all void by auto pen. The laziness. He couldn't just sign it. Former White House ethics czar Norm Eisen. It's good to see you, brother. So, what do we know about auto pen? I do know that Bush II looked at it, his administration. He never used the auto pen, but they thought that the auto pen should be fine as long as you could show that the president was effectuating the document and had the intention and recognition.
That's right, Chris. Various forms of the auto pen have been used for decades. We used it in the Obama administration. The Office of Legal Counsel, the definitive lawyers for any presidential administration, has said there is no issue with an auto pen. And this is a reprehensible and despicable argument, I think, to distract from Donald Trump's own legal problems by throwing these pardons into a propaganda bog. But it won't fly, because you showed the evidence that Donald Trump himself is using mechanical signatures. As long as the president is authorizing this, pardons actually don't even need to be signed. There's no question that Biden authorized these pardons. This is more garbage from the autocratic Trump administration. It's what dictators do, Chris. They lie.
Well, it's why Leavitt started the way she did. Leavitt starts by saying, I think we can all agree now that President Biden was non compos mentis, or however she put it. She probably doesn't know the Latin phrase, but it doesn't matter. If you could prove that a president wasn't aware of the orders, now you're in different waters, right?
Yes, but there's no indication of that. Of course, Biden was aware of these pardons. Of course, he approved the pardons. Let me tell you, if Donald Trump goes into court and instructs people to say these were not valid pardons, he's going to be laughed out, or worse, held in contempt by the courts, just like we see in a large number of the cases I'm litigating or helping on, about 24 of them. The courts are having none of his claptrap, Chris. This is even worse than the kind of thing that caused Judge Jeb Boasberg to call the administration on the carpet today. It's made up, hooey nonsense. It's insulting. It's offensive. It's what you expect from somebody who said he would be a dictator on day one, and he kept on going, Chris. It's garbage.
Let me ask you one question here while I have you. Just real quick, Norm. I need a quick answer on this. What do you care if the president appoints Musk to look at waste, fraud, and abuse?
Chris, I applied to be a member of the DOJ. We're all opposed to waste, fraud, and abuse. But Elon Musk and Donald Trump are causing more of it with their wrecking ball, their sledgehammer, and their chainsaw. That's not how you fix government. They're harming the American people, millions of us, by destroying the services we rely upon.
All right, we'll see how that case goes. Norm Eisen, thank you very much for your perspicacity, as always. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Chris.
All right, be well. 4 minutes and 15 seconds. Top 5 best hair in the business, by the way, Norm Eisen. So Trump ran on the economy, right? And it worked. Right now, he says, look at those egg prices. Told you my policies were working. Why are eggs coming down? And should Trump be looking at the economy as proof of the success of his policies? I have an economic supra genius coming up next. And I know that because that's what he calls himself. Economic supra genius.
Restlessness and feeling like you need to move. Nausea, constipation, insomnia, dizziness, increased appetite, and fatigue are common. Side effects may not appear for weeks.
Vraylar, breaking through to relief. Ask about Vraylar.
There's more to me than early bird specials. Just like there's more to Dish. All my top streaming apps are stacked in one place. It's as easy as switching to beast mode.
With live TV and streaming, there's more to Dish. Switch today and get a $200 prepaid card.
I got to tell you, it really tells you how conditioned we are to this two-party piffle that Trump is all over the place being celebrated for having some of his highest approval numbers. And he does. But he's under 50%. He's at 47%. That's what we brag about these days? Yep. A new NBC poll says that less than half of American voters approve of his handling of the economy. And it's below his approval rate, right? His approval is like 47. You know, he's upside down on the economy. Just 18% call the economy good or excellent. And you got to remember, this is Trump, who's got some of the most resilient, some of the most resilient support I've ever seen in polling. All right. So is it about the renewed trade war? Is it about what he has been saying all this time? Is that why the market is down? But now egg prices are down and Trump says, see, it's working. Does that mean it is? Let's discuss. Anthony Scaramucci was communications director in the first Trump White House, founder of Skybridge Capital. 20-year anniversary of Skybridge Capital is coming up. I wasn't invited, but I still say congratulations. Scaramucci, supra genius.
Yeah, you really too much. Of course you were invited. You know you were invited. You're on every one of my lists, including my fundraising list. But the price of eggs is not the issue, Chris. What's the issue is the uncertainty of the economic policy. And so the reason why the market's had almost a 10% correction is that we can't get any clarity from the president and the administration on what the actual economic policy is. And so you notice on Friday, no tweets on tariffs, no discussion of tariffs. Market rallied a little, but there's just great uncertainty out there. And I'll just point out to everybody that the European markets are up and the American market is lagging, which is telling you the stuff that he's saying about our allies and to our allies is hurting our capital markets. You know, flows of funds are going away from the United States right now as a result of the bellicosity of this rhetoric.
Bellicosity, good word. But Scaramucci, you must now be a renewed Trump fan because he is all crypto all the time and says he wants to make part of our strategic reserve crypto, which is all good for a crypto guy such as yourself.
Well, I try to call balls and strikes on the president. I think David Sachs has done a very good job, as his cryptos are. I think the idea around the strategic Bitcoin reserve and the fact that David is trying to make that bipartisan is a very good thing. And I was just at the tokenized conference today in New York. I spoke there. We need the appropriate regulation. And so people like Tom Emmer, Senator Gillibrand, Chuck Schumer, there's a whole host of people that are coming together in a bipartisan way to put definition on this regulation. I think that's a good thing. And you're talking about the Democrats being in the doldrums with James Carville earlier. One of the things that these guys did is they went hard against the crypto industry, and over $250 million flowed into primarily Republican campaigns in November. And as you know, there was a huge upset in Ohio where Sherrod Brown was dislodged. So, you know, the crypto policies, the pro-friendly crypto policies, I think will become bipartisan. And you have to applaud the president's political instincts for that, Chris, whether you like them or not.
Well, the question is, what are his instincts being driven by when it comes to crypto? But we'll leave that for another day. Warren Buffett says he wouldn't touch it. You say eggs doesn't matter. Eggs is all that matters. Eggs as groceries proxy and gas, that's what got him elected. No trans athletes. It's one of the most absurd campaign platforms ever, but it worked. No trans athletes and the gas and the groceries are too high. I'll fix it. That's what won it for him.
All right, well, okay, but you have to remember there was a vacuum of advocacy on the other side. The Biden team actually had pretty good pieces of legislation that got passed in their first term. A lot of the inflation was inducted from the COVID overspending, the monetary and fiscal policy that flooded the money supply into the marketplace. So you had the supply chain disconnected with the money in the market, more money, less supplies. Of course, prices are going to go up. But unfortunately, they didn't give Vice President Harris a lot of time to frame her narrative. She wouldn't go on certain shows, as you know, to face some of the tougher questions. And again, calling balls and strikes on President Trump, he was everywhere. And those were big issues for people. And there was a good group of independents that went with him. And remember, even though they literally failed on so many different levels of Democrats in terms of their intergenerational transfer, they only lost by 1.5%. So they could put it together, but they are floundering right now.
I mean, look, what the Democrats have to deal with is that more Americans looked at Donald Trump and saw a sell proposition that more resembled normal than the Democratic offering. That's what they have to get their hands around. And yes, I don't buy the mandate thing either. Yes, he won all the swing states. Yes, he moved demographics in his favor. That's fine. But we were still dealing with an attrition election. Biden got more votes, and it's not supposed to work that way, that this one went down. And that's something that people should look at. And he only won like less than a third of the eligible voting pool. So there's plenty to look at for the Democrats if they want to look at it that way. Congratulations on 20 years.
Are you coming to the party, Chris Cuomo?
I wasn't invited. I wasn't invited, Anthony.
Of course you were invited. Everybody.
I wasn't invited.
Everybody whose last name ends
with
a vowel
was invited.
Got invited.
My brother was invited because that's what Scaramucci's known to do. He goes where the power is. He goes with the trend. The trend is his friend. And
I'm a super economic
genius. Super genius. That's what he calls himself. And he used to be my friend, and now he's doing what he's doing because that's what it is. And when Trump calls him and says, "Come in and be the crypto czar," guess who's not going to take my phone calls anymore? Captain Hansen, here.
Trump blames you for me getting fired. I mean, that was the last true social tweet. He said that it was my interview with you that got me fired. Yeah. So should I sting you with that, Chris?
That's why I wasn't invited. I got to go. Dusty's yelling at me for being mad to you. I love you. I'm not being mean to you, Anthony. Congratulations. I love you.
I hope you make it to the party. Love you too.
Wasn't invited. We'll be right back.